I'm Lisie Lillianfeld, a product manager working on Android. I'm here with my colleagues, Julie Cattiau and Casey Burkhardt, and together, we are excited to share some of the latest updates from Android accessibility. For context, we on the Android accessibility team follow the principle of nothing about us without us. This means that we innovate not only for people with disabilities, but also with them in collaboration. So I just want to say thank you to all the people with disabilities who were involved in designing, building, and testing these features. Okay, let's get into the updates. First, let me tell you about some new features for people with visual impairments. In this section, I'll cover updates to Talkback, outline text, and 2 features that are exclusive to Pixel. People who are blind or have low vision are able to use their device with the assistance of Talkback, Android's built-in screen reader. It reads out content that is on the screen in response to the user's taps and swipes. Until recently, images were particularly hard to understand, unless developers provided a detailed description. When the user would interact with an image, the descriptions they would get could be too short or vague. So an image might be described as a building or a view of Sydney, Australia. But now, users can get image descriptions powered by Gemini, which are much more detailed and vivid. Gemini might say, the image shows a wide shot of Sydney, Australia. The Sydney Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge are visible in the center of the image. The sky is clear and blue. Users with vision impairments have called these descriptions a game changer. In the past, if they were browsing social media or in a group chat, they might have missed out on the photos. Even photos in their own camera roll were hard to experience. Now, Talkback enables them to enjoy these photos of family and friends. And if you're interested in the technology behind this feature, it uses a fast and powerful server-side Gemini model. On Pixel 9 Pro series devices, Talkback can also use the on-device Gemini Nano model, which enables users to get image descriptions even while offline. New in this release, we're extending Talkback's image description feature to enable users to ask Gemini follow-up questions to get more detail on what matters to them. So let's say I'm in a group chat, and a friend shares a photo of herself with a new guitar. I might not be able to see the image, but I can use Talkback to get a description of the image and then ask Gemini for more details specifically about the guitar. This gives me the context to respond to my friend's message with genuine enthusiasm. Also new, Talkback users can now easily ask Gemini to describe and answer questions about the whole screen. This can help with getting oriented quickly on a new page, like the spoken equivalent of glancing at the screen. In addition to the new AI features, Talkback has made several improvements to help users navigate their device more efficiently. Screen search lets you jump to what you're looking for, and now you can search across multiple pages of an app within the search results view. Opening hyperlinks has also gotten easier, requiring fewer taps even if the link appears within a block of text. Finally, Talkback has also made it easier to navigate tables and to use Braille displays. To learn more about the new features in Talkback, check out the Help Center link in the description below. Now on to outline text. Designed for people with low vision, outline text increases the contrast of the text. It changes the text to either black or white, based on the original text color, and adds a subtle, transparent highlight behind the text for contrast. One nice detail is that it preserves the color of links and colored text, so users won't miss out on a color that indicates important information. For people who have Pixel devices, there are 2 more features designed for vision accessibility. Pixel Magnifier helps people with low vision to see the world around them. It uses the Pixel camera to let people capture and zoom in on anything they want to see more clearly. New updates include the ability to search for specific words within an image, and picture-in-picture, so you can keep track of where you are in an image when you zoom way in. Finally, there's Guided Frame. Guided Frame helps Pixel users capture great photos by giving spoken feedback on what's in the viewfinder. New in Guided Frame is improved object detection and guidance on taking selfies at a good angle. Guided Frame turns on automatically when a user has Talkback turned on, but now it can also be enabled directly in the Pixel camera settings. And if you want to revisit all the photos you've captured using Guided Frame, you can use Talkback to hear vivid descriptions and ask Gemini to remind you of the details from all your favorite moments. Now, I'll pass it over to Julie to talk about hearing accessibility.
Thank you, Lisie. Hi, my name is Julie. I'm a product manager on the Android accessibility team, and I'd love to share with you what we've been working on for the deaf and hard of hearing community. The first update I have is a feature called Expressive Captions. You may already be using Live Captions, which is designed to caption any video you watch on your Android device. Expressive Captions is a new feature in Live Captions that helps viewers experience the emotions in a video. In order to do that, Expressive Captions include captions that convey emphasis, tone, and sounds. And with Expressive Captions V2, which is coming in Android 16, we'll also be adding word duration, as featured in this video clip, and new sounds, such as when someone is whispering or yawning. Next, we've made some improvements to Live Transcribe. Live Transcribe is an app that captions real-world, face-to-face conversations in more than 80 languages. You can use Live Transcribe today anywhere, even if you're offline, in 15 languages that are available on device. We've recently added a handy dual screen mode for foldable phones, making face-to-face conversations even easier. And in June, we'll also add support for pinch to zoom so our users can easily and quickly increase the font size in Live Transcribe. Moving on to hearing aids. We've made it easier to directly transfer a call to your hearing aid. You can now directly select your hearing aid from the phone app while you're making a phone call. This feature is available for all hearing aids devices that are LE audio supported. We're also making it easier for users of hearing aids to access key hearing aid settings directly from the Quick Settings menu. Starting in Android 15, users could easily manage hearing aid settings like presets, battery level, and Bluetooth from the shortcut menu. And building on this, in Android 16, users will also be able to view their hearing aids connection status and control their hearing aid ambient volume all in one place. Let's now take a look at some of our updates focused on Dexterity. We recently introduced new keyboard accessibility features for devices with connected physical keyboards. Mouse keys allows users to control the on-screen mouse pointer using the keypad buttons instead of a mouse or trackpad. This feature can be useful for users with limited hand or arm movement who may find it difficult to use a traditional mouse. The Sticky Keys feature allows you to press shortcut keys one at a time instead of having to press multiple buttons simultaneously. Slow Keys allows you to adjust how long you need to hold down a key before it's registered. And finally, Bounce Keys ignores quickly repeated presses of the same key. All these features aim to improve typing and navigation for users with limited dexterity, and we hope you'll find them helpful. And with that, I'll pass it over to Casey to talk about developer and API updates.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, my name is Casey Burkhardt. I'm a software engineer on the Android accessibility team. I'm excited to highlight some changes to the accessibility APIs, as well as updates to accessibility best practices and tooling for app developers. The Android Accessibility API is the foundation that allows apps to expose their UI and functionality to a wide range of assistive technologies. And in Android 16, we've made a number of additions to the Platform Accessibility API to allow apps to more expressively represent their semantics. We'll touch on a few of important additions, particularly in the Accessibility Node Info and Accessibility Event classes, but you can find the full details on developer.android.com. You should also check out this year's Build More Accessible UIs with Jetpack Compose Google I/O session to learn about the accessibility APIs through the semantics surfaced by Compose-based UI. We've added a new concept known as a supplemental description, which offers a structured way to add an additional accessibility label to UI elements in order to describe their purpose. Supplemental descriptions are particularly useful when defined on containers or focusable groupings of UI. They should be used in cases where you want to expose some additional information about the group in a way that won't override the text or description from its subtree. You can think of supplemental descriptions as a complement to content descriptions, which offer similar labeling functionality, but will override the descriptions from the group's descendants. This API allows you to augment how a screen reader would describe your UI without having to build up your own content descriptions, which can be error-prone or introduce challenges with localization. As an example, a supplemental description might be used on a custom drop-down menu that doesn't otherwise have a label describing its purpose. In this case, we use font family to convey that information to users while preserving other text labels that represent the currently selected font. We've also added XML attributes and APIs on Vue to make it more convenient to provide supplemental descriptions. The Accessibility API now offers a structured way to represent a UI element's expanded or collapsed state. Previously, the best approach was to surface this information through the free-form state description property, but we now recommend migrating to this new API. Accessibility Node Info's new expanded state property allows you to convey whether something on screen is collapsed, partially, or fully expanded. And the new expanded content change type on accessibility event signals any change in that UI's expanded state to accessibility services. When UI can be expanded and collapsed by users, you should continue to support and respond to action expand and action collapse accessibility actions, which are supported going back to API 21. We've also added a way for developers to convey partially checked controls within the Accessibility API. You'll sometimes encounter this pattern in hierarchical lists, where a checkbox for a parent group uses this state to represent that some of its children are selected while others are not. We've deprecated Accessibility Node Info's Boolean checked property and replaced it with an integer property that can represent true, false, or partial checked states. We've also added a new content change type on accessibility event to convey a change in a UI element's checked state. Previously, sending a type view clicked accessibility event from a checkable element was expected. We still recommend dispatching that event on earlier API versions, but you should begin using this new approach starting at API 36 to ensure screen readers provide feedback when the checked state of a control changes. Another addition to the Accessibility API in Android 16 relates to how apps represent form fields that require user input or selection. A common practice is to indicate required or optional fields using a visible text label, sometimes relying on an asterisk to denote which fields require input. In addition to visible labels, we now also recommend using Accessibility Node Info's new Field Required property to convey this information to accessibility services in a structured way. Previously, there was not a consistent way for apps to indicate to accessibility services that a UI element was displaying an indeterminate state, such as loading indicators and progress bars without a numerical progress value. In Android 16, we've made an addition to Accessibility Node Info's Range Info class to offer a reliable way to convey this state. When displaying such a progress indicator, we recommend using the new indeterminate Range Info type on the Accessibility Node Info emitted by that element. You can continue to set a content description or state description too if you'd like to convey additional information to users. Next up, I'd like to highlight some recently updated accessibility best practices. As you heard from Lisie, we're continuing to improve Talkback's image description features, which automatically offer detailed information about images and photos. Developers play an important role in ensuring this feature works well across apps. We continue to recommend providing your own descriptive and localized accessibility labels throughout your UIs, but in cases where that's not possible, such as where images from user-generated content are displayed, there's another important step in ensuring these image description features work well: conveying image semantics from UI elements that may benefit from additional descriptions will cue Talkback to offer or automatically generate image descriptions. When using Compose, this is accomplished by using or extending an image composable. If you're working with views, use an image view, image button, or one of their subclasses. If you're using a custom view, override getAccessibilityClassName and return android.widget.imageview. As we continue to evolve Android's accessibility API, we're focusing on offering app developers the ability to convey a richer set of UI semantics that generalize to a wider range of assistive technologies. We're also moving away from APIs and practices that are tied to the behaviors of specific accessibility services. Last year, we strongly discouraged the use of accessibility announcements, a concept that often over-optimizes the experience for users of screen readers and may produce inconsistent, sometimes disruptive experiences. With Android 16, we're officially deprecating the APIs used to generate these announcements, and we're planning to end support for Talkback's handling of them in a future release. To make it easier to test for this, Talkback's speech output overlay, which you can enable from its developer settings, will turn red when producing feedback from accessibility announcements. If your app relies on type announcement accessibility events or views announce for accessibility method, now is the time to migrate to a more semantic alternative. These alternatives include providing descriptive labels that clearly communicate actions associated with UI elements, eliminating the need to provide confirmation announcements for most user interactions, using window and pane titles to convey a high-level description for activities and fragments, which are described by Talkback automatically during transitions, or defining live regions on UI elements that appear temporarily or update their descriptions if users should be made aware of those related content changes. For more details, check out the Announce for Accessibility API documentation linked from the description below. Finally, an update on testing. We've heard many requests from developers for accessibility checks that work from Compose tests. And today, I'm excited to share that in Compose 1.8, we've released an integration between Android's accessibility test framework and the Compose UI test library. This new offering can leverage existing tests using Android Compose test rule to identify some common accessibility issues automatically. To enable these checks, add the UI test JUnit 4 accessibility dependency, call the Enable Accessibility Checks extension function on Android Compose test rule, and trigger a test action, such as calling perform click. You can also invoke try perform accessibility checks to explicitly run the accessibility checks at any point during a test. If the accessibility test framework identifies a potential issue, it will throw an exception, failing the test. You can customize the behavior of the accessibility checks by providing your own accessibility validator instance. This allows you to do things like configure the severity level for problems that will cause tests to fail, or provide a matcher for suppressing failures from known issues. We continue to strongly recommend developers test apps by using them with Android's assistive technologies to best understand the experience users will encounter. These automated checks complement manual testing by accelerating the detection of a variety of possible accessibility barriers. We've covered a lot here, from updates to accessibility features related to vision, hearing, and dexterity, to changes in our APIs, best practices, and tooling. Be sure to check out the links in the description to learn more about these topics. Thanks for joining us today and for doing your part to build an ecosystem of highly accessible and inclusive apps.